2, 3, 4. Have you ever tasted homemade maple syrup? It's warm, sticky, sweet. It's a flavor like no other. I recently moved to the state of Michigan, where the Michigan Maple Syrup Association boasts that Michigan is 5th in maple syrup production in the United States. I contacted my local extension office at Michigan State University and was referred to their website and an article by Russell Kidd from March 14th, 2013, where he stated that he explained that sap begins to flow between mid-February and mid-March, when the temperatures outside rise above freezing during the day, but at night they dip below freezing. That's when the sap begins to flow. And it continues to flow for about 4 to 6 weeks, and that's when it must be harvested or collected. Kidd also stated in his article that there's an inexpensive publication available on the Extension Office's bookstore that can be purchased, explaining how to make maple syrup. But we'll get to how to make it in just a moment. Maple syrup is delicious, but are there other trees that can be harvested, the sap can be harvested from, for human consumption, for syrup or sugar making? Adam Harriton, a wild food enthusiast, researcher, forager, and founder of wildfoodism.com, stated that there are 22 common trees found in the United States that can be harvested from for sap or syrup production. The list includes sugar, black, red, silver, Norway, bigleaf, canyon, Rocky Mountain maples, as well as box elders, Garoso, butternut, black walnut, heartnut, English walnut, paper, yellow, black, river, gray, and European white birch trees, as well as sycamore and ironwood trees. It's important to properly identify the tree you wish to tap. If you're unsure how, you can identify them by leaf. This is a maple leaf from my backyard. I'm not sure if it is a Norway or sugar maple. They're very similar and both are used for maple syrup production. Sugar maple is the most preferred, but I'm thinking this is a Norway. You can also identify a tree by the flowers, if there are any, seeds, bark color, and texture, which seems to be easier in the warmer growing months of the tree. If you still aren't sure, you can call an arborist or a tree expert to come to your home to help identify the trees properly that you wish to tap. Once you've identified the trees that you're tapping, that's when the work begins. You need to gather you'll need some equipment for collecting sap. The company that I purchased my tools from gave a list of instructions that came with the materials. But you're going to need spouts or spiles, as they're called. Some are metal. These are plastic that I purchased. It's a tube that goes into the tree on this end and connects to a tube, which is also part of the equipment that you'll need. Connects to the tube from the tree and goes into your collection device, bottle or bucket that you choose to collect with. They offered these instructions for tapping trees with the purchase of my spouts and tubing. They said to gather your tools for the job. Locate the tree's southern exposure. The south side of the tree is actually going to produce sap quickly as it's warmed by the sun first than other sides of the tree. You're going to drill into the tree approximately 1 inch into the white wood at a very slight upward angle at about 3 feet from the ground. And that's where you're going to place your spout. It will be, I'll be careful not to hammer in the spout too far into the tree, because then it'll be hard to remove when that season is ended, and you don't want to leave the spout in the tree after the sap gathering has ended. So once you have all your equipment into place, now You need to monitor your collection twice a day, probably in the morning and in the evening. Depending on the temperatures and the type of tree that you've tapped is going to vary on how much sap actually comes out and is collected each day. So it's a good idea not to let it overflow and be wasted, but collected and removed if that collection jug is full. When you finish the collection, you need to wash your equipment with soap and water so that you can reuse it for the next year. These are plastics and definitely not disposable, so we want to use them again the following spring. So now that the sap has been collected, how much do I need to make syrup? Jessie Randall of the Iowa State University Extension Office explained the rule of 86. She stated that 1% sugar concentration, which most trees have in their sap, it takes 86 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of maple syrup. At higher concentrations, like in the sugar maple and black maple, it's 2%. So you need half the amount, 43 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of maple syrup. So obviously maple syrup makers prefer those two trees because you have to gather less of the sap. But how do I take the sap and actually make the maple syrup? It's liquidy. It doesn't quite look like syrup. It has a little bit of an odor, so you're pretty familiar with what you have when you grab your collection jars. You take that sap and it's time to boil it down. You boil it down, and you can purchase special equipment to do this called evaporators, or you can do it right in a normal kitchen pot. Some people do this, some sugar makers do this outdoors, some over an open fire, some in an outdoor kitchen. It does take some time, and it is a labor-intensive work, so a lot of people like to do it outdoors. Boil it down while they're doing other yard work in the spring. Utilizing maybe their fire pit, or like I said, their outdoor kitchen. So you must reduce the sap so that most of the water is evaporated out. Again, you're going to concentrate it, and it's going to leave behind a concentrated, flavorful syrup. Then you need to filter it out. Filter out any sediments or anything that might have gotten in during collection. You're going to filter it and then bottle it. Once you've bottled it into clean glass bottles, you cap them and refrigerate them, and use as desired to sweeten and delight. Enjoy making your own maple syrup. I know that there's only one thing sweeter than spring to arrive. It's the first taste of that homemade maple syrup. Thank you.